so long a letter, 18 pages from former President to Dr. Goodluck Jonathan joining us to look at that. Ikechukwu Ikeji, he's a lawyer. Good morning and thanks for joining us. You must have seen that letter, 18 pages so far. Well, what's your take on that?
Well, my take on that letter is simply to come from certain premises before getting into the main letter, and that is the premise that what is the intention behind the letter? The contents of the letter are germane. They are very key. They are facts that are out there in the open. But the question still remains, and that is the perspective I want to take it from, that the messenger and the message, how do you relate both of them in the light of the exigencies of the present moment, in terms of the heat that the letter is generating in the polity? So I want us to take it from that perspective before going into the contents of the letter. Because if you go into the contents, yes, if you get into the contents of the letter, you start raising certain issues. For example, corruption, second term, security. Those are some of the issues that were raised in the letter. And you want to ask a question as to corruption. On what basis should an Obasanjo query the corruption level that exists today in Nigeria? The Transparency International Global Corruption Perception Index in 2000, from 2003, 2004, 2005, as at 2005, Nigeria was the 6th most corrupt country on earth. We were 6th from bottom. As at the time Yaradua took over in 2008, we rose to about 42 from bottom. We became the 42nd most corrupt country on earth. There was an improvement. Now, my point there is that during Obasanjo's era, corruption was like oxygen in Nigeria. It was like the air that we breathed, and the entire world knew about it. So, talking about corruption now raises a question as to the intention behind raising alert. You know, as to yes.
Mr. Ikeji, if I may come in, a lot of people argue with you on that point. They will tell you that it was at that time that the ICPC and the EFCC came in and it began to do a lot of work. Have you forgotten the tendencies of EFCC then? EFCC was clearly militant in nature. EFCC will arrest, or that is what I term it to be. EFCC will arrest legislators, quarter them in a hotel, and in the midnight they will pass a bill. Sometimes 6 out of 24 legislators will impeach a governor. Irrespective, I am a human and constitutional rights person. I appreciate the rights of Obasanjo to state the facts as a right enshrined under the Constitution. I also appreciate the need for transparency and responsibility in governance, which it is important to call upon Jonathan to address. But EFCC was not actually directing the fight of corruption to the appropriate quarters then. There was selective fight then during Obasanjo's era. And it was militant. It was because of the militant nature of the fight then that made it a newsworthy item then. So it became very militant, and people became afraid of EFCC. Not because in real terms they were fighting corruption. Because then we had a neutral research body, the Transparency International, coming out with an index study of perception of Nigeria. And perception is about public sector corruption. What happens in the public sector? And we all knew what was happening then.
We all knew what we saw in terms of fuel scarcity. Then we used to have fuel queues. We used to have all sorts of strikes then. Now, the next question I would look at is the issue of second term. I insist that it is preposterous for anybody, for whatsoever reason, to suggest that the constitutional rights of anybody or any person be abridged in whatsoever form. I stand seriously and very sternly in support of constitutional rights. You see, no matter the promise I make to you, no matter the promise anybody makes to you, insofar as that promise is inconsistent with the provisions of the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, that promise, even if I signed it as a contract, even if you present it to me that I signed it, becomes null and void. It is a simple provision of the Constitution. So if I come to promise you,
what are you driving at here now?
What I am driving at is that it is wrong to hold Jonathan to a promise that he shouldn't run for a second term. Assuming without considering that such a promise exists, I have gone beyond the point of saying that there was no such promise, and if there was such a promise, that it should be produced. I have gone beyond it. Even if you produce it, it's of no effect. It is of no consequence whatsoever.
Because from the
and even again, the moral point there again is that even he, Obasanjo, attempted third term. That is part of Nigerian history today. Ghana must go back became very popular as a means of carrying money during that era of third term. Even Condoleezza Rice, in one of her books, confirmed that Obasanjo was warned not to go for third term. So there cannot be any form of denial. And that period, everybody was waiting for him to speak. As we speak today, he has not even replied or responded to the fact whether he wanted to go for second term or not. So why would he come and insist that the president should come up and tell us whether he is contesting or not? The clear intention of the entire letter, I dare say, is 2015 to ensure that the president does not contest. Now, I am not going to hold brief here for the president because I'm not paid by him to so hold. But the truth must be told that the president cannot be asked not to contest for a second term based upon any form of premise whatsoever.
You know, a lot of people have been saying so many things about this particular letter. If you look at the headlines this morning, yes, they're making front page, Presidency threatens APC leaders with treason, and you look at the others talking about some move in the National Assembly. And,
yes,
well, if we bring that to what you just said now.
Yes, on those two scores, treason, I am in support of the thinking, of the thought pattern that the letter borders on treason.
On the thought pattern of the presidency?
Yes, the thought pattern of the presidency. If the letter, the Obasanjo letter, gets close, if not inside of the territory of treason.
Tell us more on this.
Yes, because there are allegations of keeping some snipers, having a list of people to be eliminated as it were. And if, like the last speaker said, if an ordinary person like you and I writes such a letter with the contents, it may not make too much sense. It may be looked at as criticism. But where such a letter is coming from an ex-president, knowing his antecedents, when Obasanjo starts criticizing you and starts dining with you at the same time, there is problem. There are historical landmarks to that effect. So coming from such a highly placed person, the only result from such a letter is incitement. And as we can see today in the polity, there is heat in the polity. And if by your actions or inactions, as it were, you are inciting rebellion against the government of Nigeria, it may border on treason. It may be left to the courts to decide whether or not, yes, it is treason. But you can attempt to press a charge for treason. Now, if the truth be told, if Nigeria were a better country